just updating everyone. So we officially had him yesterday evening. Super fast labor. It progressed really quickly. By the time I got to the hospital, I was already 5 centimeters, and then within a few hours I was at 8 or 9. I still hadn't gotten the epidural yet. That was crazy. That feeling was super intense. Yeah. But I finally got the epidural at like 8 or 9 centimeters, and super grateful for that. Since then it has just been resting, because I had been up for probably over 30 hours at that point, and I was so exhausted. So Mom and Dad, we've just been resting up here in our room. Got some flowers sent to us. I got some eggs and breakfast food. We're close to the NICU, making stops in there to see him. Currently pumping to get some of the colostrum to give to him periodically as well, so he has some nutrients and food. But he's still in the NICU. They're just monitoring his breathing even more, because he had a lot of stuff in his lungs. So they're trying to make sure that he's okay and he's gonna remain stable. They're also doing some antibiotics and stuff just in case he had any kind of infection, because it's hard to tell the first 12 hours as a newborn if there's any risks with that. And since I was GBS positive, they wanted to just run antibiotics just in case in his system. So he's getting that. He's on hydrating fluid IVs, hooked up on a breathing machine, surfactant in his lungs to help open his lungs more to process the fluids better, and he's doing really good. So we're stopping in to see him. It's really hard to not touch him and hold him. We're just staring at him though. He's just so cute, and he's got all these things hooked up to him, and so I want to keep him as comfortable as possible. He finally seemed like he was peaceful and resting and breathing better, and I didn't want to go in there and like touch him and disturb him and wake him up. So we're just staring at him. Yeah, so you guys can maybe get to see him soon, and maybe we'll be able to hold him soon. They might have to keep him in there for a couple days to just make sure everything is level and stays that way. We might be here for the next 3 or 4 days. I don't know. We'll just keep updating and videoing the moments that maybe we get to see him or hold him or finally take him home or introduce him to people. So that is the update from the hospital.
I'm afraid he would get too upset if we tried to let her hold him.
I totally get it, yeah.
Once he's more stable and not breathing so hard, not requiring so much extra help to breathe, then we want skin to skin all day long. I mean, that's the best thing for him.
Totally get it.
But you notice how he worked so hard, just a little bit of fussing he just did. Yeah. So it makes him breathe a lot faster, and it stresses him out a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're doing everything we can to try to keep him agitated, and the more he cries, the shorter of breath he's gonna get, and then it's just kind of a big spiral. So hopefully we can gradually wean down off of some of this respiratory support, and then maybe they can start letting him eat. So probably before that happens, right now he's on IV fluids for hydration and nutrition. When they start slowing down with his breathing, they may start tube feedings, where we put the tube in. He already has the tube. It's in his mouth. It goes down the back of his throat into his stomach. I put it in there because he was spitting a lot of bloody secretions, and I wanted to make sure he didn't have anything like that in his stomach.
Okay.
Well guys, today is the day that we get to officially take home little Trekkers. Woo! You excited, baby?
Man, it's so hard to leave him. We've gone back home to kind of rest and get ready at the house and all that, and then we show up at the NICU to give him like milk and see him. And we're usually there for like 3-4 hours, just literally with him the whole time. And when we have to go, it is so hard.
It really is.
Like, as he's
you're just like,
there,
it's your baby, and you're like, okay, bye.
Yeah, like see you tomorrow, type of thing. Yeah. It's weird, especially when this little tiny hand wraps his whole hand around like knuckle of my pinky.
So sweet.
And he's grabbing tight. I'm like, I'm not leaving now.
I know.
I'm gonna stay here forever.
Or his eyes open and he looks right at you.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
Or you hear him just, whoo.
Yeah, his little squeaks and grunts.
It is so hard.
It's been really hard, but we're super grateful for. Did you get the gift?
Oh shucks.
Oh, we gotta turn around.
We gotta get that.
We're getting a gift for the nursing staff because they have been amazing, like incredible. It's hard enough leaving your baby anywhere with anyone. With strangers. Really. But they've just been so personable and intentional and caring and patient. They know how to love on newborns and take care of them. And
it's their job.
Yeah, it's their job. So
to make sure the newborns are just taken care of.
So I was nervous about leaving him, but they have been just incredible. So now we're turning around, getting the gift, and then we are on our way to the hospital. Trek's been in NICU since day one. A couple minutes after he was born, just to update everyone on like what happened. He wasn't pinking up like he should have been. They usually like are kind of purpley when they come out, and then they get pink. Their skin gets kind of flushed and red and pink because that oxygenated blood is going through their system. And he wasn't doing that as quickly as they wanted, so they kind of took him away just a couple minutes after he was born.
The second they did that, because I was just, all right, when can we put him immediately skin to skin? Like, really wanted that. And they just grab him and walk to the other side of the room, and I was basically clawed on to them like an animal.
I saw his face. He was just like watching them and walking and following them around like a dog. Like what are you doing? What are you doing? What's going on?
I was just like, how are you doing? Whatever you're doing and why.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's such a trip. Like, I'll say this and then I'll go and get the gift. Like, it was so crazy because it's such a just a sensory overload of bonding and loving with this new human that is yours. And then for that kid to be like taken and like you don't know what's going on. They're like, oh, he's not. They're so calm. Like, those nurses are so chill that it really sets the tone.
It does.
But
you like also don't know if something serious is
going on. You have no clue.
They keep a really straight poker face.
Yeah, and I'm seeing him like cry because he's a newborn, but he's like, you could see his chest, and they're pointing at his chest, and they're like, see, look, like the way he's gasping for air and crying, like you could see his ribs, like it was pulling in and contracting. You can see his ribs, and they're like, so that's not normal. And then they immediately put him on oxygen, 60% oxygen, and took tubes and was trying to, like a suction tube, and shoved it down to like pull it out of his lungs. And then in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, let's go so we can get him on mom's chest. And then they're like, well, it still looks like he needs some more care, so we're gonna have to monitor him in a separate room for at least 2 hours. And it was just weird because it's all happening so fast. And then they put him in this little incubator, and we're walking to the elevator to the next floor, and it was so weird because I'm following them like just centimeters away from him. Like, so weird, just not wanting to leave his sight. It just felt like I was floating the whole time. It was such a weird, surreal thing. It's like you're there, but it's not even, it's like out of body, but it's not out of body because you don't see yourself from that perspective. But it was a trip, man. And then to go in there, and then the next thing you hear is he'll probably have to be here for a week, and you're just like, what is going on? So yeah, it was really difficult. I didn't really know what was going on because I was still like just freshly post-labor, like exhausted, had the epidural. I couldn't move half my body, and I'm just like sitting there watching all this happen, and I'm like, okay. All I knew is I just felt like really calm in the moment. It's like I knew it was gonna be okay. That kind of got me through it. I knew he was in good hands, and they knew what they were doing, and that he was gonna be okay. And I don't know like how I knew he was gonna be okay, but I just had this like calm, and that lasted the whole time he's been in NICU. What wound up being the diagnosis was an infection which had reached his lungs and caused like a newborn pneumonia, which they said isn't uncommon. It can happen, and any kind of infection or bacteria they can pick up either in utero or during the birthing process, or even after, you know, when they're fresh and new to the world. I had tested positive with group B strep 2 weeks prior, but they did have me on antibiotic drips during labor. So they just said it was some kind of infection because he had elevated CRP levels, which is like a reactive protein basically, and it's indicative of any kind of infections in the body and the blood. And so they're like, okay, based on the labs they could tell it was an infection, and it was just in his lungs, and he
had really reduced oxygen and he was not getting enough oxygen. So immediately they swept him away to NICU. We stayed in the hospital for a couple days until we were discharged, me and Johnny. And so we would just constantly go back and forth from our room, and his NICU place was right down the hall from us. So we would just like walk back and forth and try to give him milk and do pumping and like try to give him what he needs. He's been in for a week, and slowly but surely his infection levels have gone down. His breathing capability has gone up. And as of 2 days ago, he was completely off of his oxygen support and his feeding tube. So he was hooked up to first like an oxygen tube that went into his nose to help him get more oxygen and breathe. And then the second thing was this little IV catheter PICC line in his hand so they could give him antibiotics for the infection. And the third thing was a feeding tube going down his mouth into his stomach, because they didn't want him trying to eat orally when he was having such a hard time breathing, because he might breathe in his food. So they had a separate feeding tube going down. And then the last thing was he had a little bit elevated jaundice levels, so he was hooked up to these like jaundice lights and stuff to kind of break up the bilirubin in his system and bring that down. He was just hooked up to all of these things. Oh, and of course like monitoring his heart rate and his oxygen and like how fast he was breathing or slow. So he was hooked up to a lot of things, and he was in this little like painter looking thing in a room. He had his own room, which was cool. We could go in there and just sit on the little sofa and just be with him. But it was definitely hard seeing him all hooked up to all the machines and stuff, and he couldn't move around a lot. It made it difficult for us to sometimes kind of like hold him and
like you want to wrap your whole soul around him,
right,
and love him, but you want him to also get as much rest as possible.
Yeah.
And it was so hard.
It was.
It's crazy. I mean, it's pretty stressful because you have so much lack of sleep in your system, and you're just going and going and going, and then you're tired, you go see him. For me, it was just hearing one thing after another, and you don't know where the next thing's gonna escalate to, because the doctors have to tell you it could be worst case or it could be least concerning thing. Thank you. And so
you just don't know. It's kind of a toss-up. They have to say both.
They have to. And it makes sense, but it also, that coin toss doesn't make you feel reassured.
Right.
So you're just in the limbo of that, and then like the next day I wake up and I'm like, I'm gonna go and see him, and I go over there really quick, get the update, and then I see him on the next thing, and I'm like, I'm so half awake and I'm like exhausted, and I go over there, and the next thing I hear is like, oh yeah, so now he's got jaundice. And I know jaundice is like a very easy treatable thing, but just hearing one thing after another, like, oh, now he's got this and now it's that, it's just like, it's hard not to scale the probabilities.
Right. It's a little stressful.
But that coin toss of like, oh, you don't know, you're learning as you go. You don't know if your nips are gonna heal up, produce amount for him to get, and they're like, oh, he's eating more than normal because of how hard he's working.
Yeah, because his body was actually hooked up to so many machines, and how hard he was working to breathe and stuff. He was actually expending a lot of calories, and they said he was eating a lot more and needing more nutrients. So we were like, oh, hurry up and make milk, come on.
We almost felt like we were a little behind the gun, and like the clock was just on our heels, because this is all, we're experiencing all of this for the first time. Okay, are we doing this right? Really trying to do the best we can.
Right, like we need your breast milk, it's his medicine.
And then we're also hearing, oh, if you don't, then you might not produce at all.
Right.
Or very little. And so those probabilities, after we're hearing, oh, and now he's got jaundice, and what's next around the corner type of thing.
Yeah.
And then they're, by the way, just don't stress, it'll make it worse.
Yeah, they did say
and it's like,
that.
okay, sure, yeah, that's great. I mean, all of these
you feel stressed about stressing.
Yeah, so all of this turned out good, everything resolved.
Yeah.
And very fortunate about that, because not everybody is able to say the same thing.
Right.
So
we had a lot going on. but the staff was amazing. The nurses are amazing. We have such a deep appreciation for nurses now and all that they do, because it's not just, you know, IVs and blood pressure check. It's like, they're so personable, they're so caring, they have to be so attentive to you and your needs, and I don't know, they're just amazing, like emotionally.
They wouldn't even let you get your own water. I'd come out and be like, hey, where can I go to get some water filled up? And they would immediately pop up, no, don't worry, I'll take care of it. Do you want ice? How much do you want? I'm like, well, you could just show me, I'll do it. And they're like, no, don't even worry about it.
Yeah, they were just so sweet. So that really helped put us at ease a lot. And like I said earlier, while he was gone, I did have this like peace through the whole thing that it was going to be okay. I actually had this, I can actually use the word now, premonition that this was going to happen. And I called to actually twice double check with our insurance company, saying, hey, I want to double check that he's going to be covered after birth in case he has an infection, I said, or any type of lab work that needs to be done, and stuff that goes on with his respiratory system or cardiac system. Like, I literally called and like went through checklists and going like, is he going to be covered for all these things? And then it wound up happening. So I kind of honestly felt like, I don't know if I told you that. Yeah. So when it happened, I also had this like piece of like, okay, what?
I just remember you saying that too. Like, I feel like it's gonna turn out fine. In my mind, I was trying to be so calm for you, but in my mind, I was like, but the probabilities, they still are at the table.
Because I already knew it was like gonna happen. It was weird.
I mean, hey, you even called it the same day we found out you were pregnant. You were like, I feel like it's gonna be a boy.
Oh yeah, and I knew his personality and stuff too. I don't know what that is. Witchcraft. Women's intuition, mothers. My mom said it's mother's intuition, but
yeah, witchcraft. That's what I said.
I take it. I think witches are dope.
Yeah.
The people have such a wrong impression of what it was to be a witch back in the day.
I know.
Just basically an empowered, intuitive, spiritual female. Anyway, so he was hooked up to so much stuff that I called him my little glowworm. That became a little nickname I used for him. He had like the lights on him and all these little things, and he was always bundled up and swaddled in these things, and he just looked like a little worm.
All you would see is this tiny little head.
Yeah, just popping out.
And half his head
in a pacifier.
Pacifier would cover half his face, and all you'd hear is
he was so cute.
With him glowing all around him.
So he was our little glowworm. Johnny called him a slug bug. Yeah, so this is our update from the NICU and everything that has been going on with that. And officially, as of today, they said all his labs came back great and the infection looks like it's cleared. His breathing, he's been off of all the breathing support for a couple days. He's able to eat now. He took a bottle the other day, did some breastfeeding work. That's going to be like we're both going to have to work on that relationship a little bit. But he's doing really good and he's eating lots of food. He's a hungry boy, like his daddy. And yeah, we're just super excited. So we're actually on the way to the hospital right now. They called today and they cleared him for discharge. So we're gonna go pick him up. We're gonna officially have our baby boy with us forever. So stay tuned for the next episode. We'll be bringing baby home.